Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon for this round table. I'm a journalist. I'm in charge of tech and AI for Politico, and my name is Ocean Herrero. We're going to be talking about model collapse today, and I'm sure there are many of you who use artificial intelligence in your day-to-day life or at work for different tasks. And we'll see whether or not the answers that we come up with today satisfy you or not, and whether you're happy with the answers that AI provides you when you question it. So this is a bit of a risk of the model collapse. We're talking about this AI model collapse, and that defines the way in which AI models are being trained on information which is generated by AI. So it's a bit of a dog chasing its own tail, really, and it means that we may be losing quality in the model at the end of the day. That's a question that a lot of businesses are delving into, as are those who create AI and those who use AI. So it's one of the points we're going to be able to be talking about today. To lead our debate, we have several panelists with us today. We have Marta Garcia Aller. She's a journalist and president of SIA Partners. We've got Thierry Drez, who's chairman of Covea, Christian Akiki, who's at the head of Philip Morris, and Xavier Durand, who is at the head of Coface. So first of all, I'm going to hand the floor to Anne Perrault, an economist, who's going to define the contours of our debate. Thank you very much, Ocean. Yes, in this session, there are a lot of sessions this year on AI. That's obvious when you read the program. Most of those other sessions are for the introduction of AI in different production processes, saying that it's going to enhance productivity, which is slacking a bit in France. But we're going to look a little bit something more negative, but where there may well be some solutions. So as Ocean has said, the AI model collapse, it's not a very optimistic term, but it refers to the worsening of AI models when they are trained on data that has already been produced by AI. So yes, the risk is there, and there's more and more data available on the internet to train AI models. So the more data produced by the generative AI models, the more these models will be using their own production to fuel themselves, to train. Right at the very beginning, AI was being trained on data produced by humans, but that is no longer the case. So we see what the risk can be. And there's also going to be the disappearance of diversity. Everything will become uniform. There are going to be no nuances, and some knowledge will fall by the wayside as well. So on the one hand, you've got data produced by humans and data produced by models on the other. So human data has style, it has different ways of thinking things through, new ideas, but also mistakes as well by human beings, but a lot of creativity. And if you look at the different characteristics and compare them with data produced by AI, well, the latter is much smoother. The statistical models produced by AI tend to offer the most likely responses to any given question. And insofar as they are suggesting the most probable answers, they are sweeping to one side everything which, well, sometimes can lead to errors, of course, and humans can produce errors, but they're also wiping to one side all kinds of originality, a new way of thinking about a question. So the consequences of that are constant, homogeneous answers which lack in creativity, multiplication and accentuation of mistakes, and self-preference, because they're going around in a loop. All of this is linked to a reduction in statistic information, linked to how AI functions. Because it's working on probabilities, the most probable outcome. So the question is, What can we do in this situation? There are many players that we can count on. There are the businesses that create AI, of course, because those firms, it's not in their interest for everyone to lose their interest and their trust in the answers that their AIs are producing. So one might think, to ward off this risk, quite a few AI engines are going to hold on to top quality human data, which is not standardized, etc., such as books, for example, literature, but also scientific articles, fora, conversations, source codes created by humans, etc., etc. But there's another possibility, and that is filtering content produced by AI to detect data which has been produced thanks to synthetic data, which the AIs have been learning with, in order to try and curb the amount of synthetic data in the data that is produced by AI, with automatic detection of data or text produced by AI. We've got watermarking, for example, and we'll come back to that, I'm sure. All of these technologies that can detect AI are constantly being left behind in the dust by AI. So you can only be moderately confident in these safety barriers. So the idea is to try and do everything to make sure that we can maintain diverse statistics that AI uses to learn. Of course, humans can be incorporated into the loop, human beings who check that AI data and AI answers are compatible with what we know on this, that, or the other subject. For example, in the department where I work at Bercy, we've got a data sciences unit. We've got a lot of specialists there, lots of data scientists there, who no longer recruit coders. They have AI to do the coding, but there is one human being who's in charge of checking everything, that all of the codes that AI have produced, to make sure that these codes are not going to send us barking up the wrong tree. So they're creating identified human data sets. The possibility of model collapse during learning is another option, but that means that models are produced which are more robust. And the final point, which I'm sure we'll come back to at the end of our debate, is wondering about the possible role of the state in these policies that are supposed to be protecting us from the model collapse. If, for example, we try to imagine a type of something similar like a national library, one place where we can enshrine a certain set of data which AI can have access to train their models, but this data is protected from falsification and is certified. Is that a realistic way of protecting data? Or are we already floundering, and are we already lost? Is it too late? Thank you very much. I'm going to hand the floor to Matagasa Aller. You, as a journalist, have also kept an eye on information that is produced. Do you feel that the quality of information has been diluted because of all of that generated by AI? And what kind of role do you imagine that your profession can play? Thank you, Océane. You too are a journalist. You know the challenges that we have ahead of us with AI.
I feel more comfortable in it. And I think the question of this panel is key for the future, not only of AI, but the future of reality itself, according to what you were saying. And now we risk not knowing what is real and what it's not anymore. And that's a risk for journalism, of course, but it's a risk for democracy itself. If we don't know what is real and what is not, we will never know what to vote, actually. And I think that's the main challenge we have ahead. But the real challenge is not a technical one, the challenge with AI in journalism. I think the real challenge, it's a matter of legitimacy. It's who can we trust and who can we trust not. It's harder to tell what is real, what is not, what is fiction, what is reality, what is artificial, and what is human, as you were saying. And that's really big challenge we have ahead. And I'm saying that the antidote for it, the answer for it, we won't find that in technology only. We need technology to solve this also in journalism. But what can kill journalism is distrust. And the way of solving it is journalism itself, is having journalists on the field, boots on the ground, having people, humans, who you can trust, who can say, I was there, I saw what happened, and this is not real. But how do we trust people anymore? How do we know that people are real anymore if what you can see on TV or what you can listen in the radio can be fake by AI? That's the main thing we have ahead. And at its core, it's not a technological problem. We always confront AI in newsrooms as a problem of creating the news. Will human journalists will be replaced by AI? But actually, the real challenge is how consumers, how citizens are approaching information. That's what AI is really changing these days. And I think that's the biggest challenge, but also the biggest opportunity for journalism, because in the future, that future we are starting to live in now, where we don't know what is real and what is not anymore, journalists will be crucial, will be the antidote for this chaos. We will need people we trust, we will need companies we trust to tell us what is real and what it's not, because misinformation travels faster, cheaper, and farther than real news. And now it's much easier to find fake news than real news. So I think that it's a great opportunity for journalism in the future, but a really big challenge for media companies these days.
Merci. Mathieu Courtecuisse, en tant qu'acteur du conseil qui déploie justement l'IA chez...
Matthew Courtecuisse, so how do you assess the trust that people can have in models and this risk of a deteriorating quality of data in the short and medium term? To come back to what has just been said, we work on company data, not data which pertains to democracy or journalistic data. The scientific debate on model collapse, well, the jury's still out on that one. There's research which suggests that the pollution of scientific data exists. What we see in businesses is that this risk, in fact, we don't observe it, but over the past 2 or 3 years, we have observed a spectacular increase in how large language models are working and a decrease in hallucinations. If you take one of the biggest AI companies that exist, Palantir, we all can note that in the military sector, that everything is becoming more precise. So I don't think we can talk about pollution here because it's a bit of a theoretical question. What I'm worried about more is that we are using a risk which hasn't really been confirmed, to use that unconfirmed risk to change legislation. In the United States, there's lobbying to avoid a new regulations tunnel. There was a discussion which ended a few days ago as part of the digital omnibus, and the European Commission itself has recognized that it is out of step with quite a lot of regulatory steps that have been taken when you're talking about things which can damage innovation. Because what will happen is you've got a selector of the right size of things in large language models. You've got watermarking, etc. and they are going to prevent us from moving forward. So we'll be lagging behind China. So we are faced with this approach, and there are some solutions which will come from the market. The main LLM producers, well, they've all got their own different strategy, but the value that they have is that of trust. If they can't enhance their models in terms of relevancy and accuracy, well, at the end of the day, they will be sanctioned by the market. And some have preempted some of these risks by signing some license agreements because they can imagine forth future legal risks, etc. So they have anticipated that by contacting some data providers, and I have noted effervescence amongst a lot of startups in the United States, which are wanting to buy data, and these LLM budgets are rather small when you're talking about purchasing data. But if you want to buy a top quality data set in the medical field, for example, then you can sell it for a fortune. And then there's a bit of a dilemma, because if you don't sell it yourself, then someone else will get hold of it and sell it instead. A lot of people are using ChatGPT for prevention and pre-consultations and having a second medical opinion. Whereas today, people are using data sets that might come from hospitals from all over the world, and they will purchase them. So the market is adapting, and trust is essential in the medium term. But if you're talking about the collection of real-time data, it's quite amazing. Thierry Derez, I don't know if you're selling your data to AI. I believe you do use some tools and have built them into your activities in the world of insurance. So where are you using AI? And what do you do about that risk of inaccuracy? First of all, let's tell the audience that from our different members, our policy holders, we receive letters which have been written using AI. It's obvious. So when you're claiming a leak, for example, and you refer to jurisprudence from the European Court of Justice, and you refer to inter-community regulation, saying that this inter-community regulation has not yet been transposed into this, that, or the other country, then you say either this client here is a law graduate, he studied all types of law, including European law, either that, or, and this is what we think, this client has asked ChatGPT to write the letter for him or her. So, first of all, you've got our insurance policy holders are using AI. So we too have to use them, because we have to follow the needs and the requirements of our policy holders. So we have to mirror their requests. I'm not describing a world where AI is talking to AI, because to answer an AI, well, who could be a better interlocutor than another AI? So if two AIs can battle things out and argue things out without collapsing, but because there are no consequences, at the end of the day, the insurance company will pay what it has to pay. So there are some use cases. In our group, there are about 100 of them. So I'm not going to go through the whole catalogue, but some of them are painless, unimportant. For example, we've got AI which looks at the ID documents which we regularly have to ask our policy holders for to fight against money laundering. From time to time, every now and then, we have to ask our policy holders for this, that, or the other document. We may have forgotten that we've already asked for it, but AI will go and find it in its database. And so that's an advantage for us. It means that we don't have to bother our policyholder, because if we ask you for a copy of your passport for 3 times, 3 consecutive times, then you can get a bit fed up with us. So AI helps us to smooth out the relationship with our policy holders. Something which is more impressive is, for example, the ability to take a screenshot of some damage to a car in order then to identify whether we're going to repair or replace. Once that choice is made, to identify the cost of that operation, to commission a garage to do the repairs, to pay the compensation, order the replacement vehicle, and provide that vehicle to our policyholder. A machine can do this in less than 4 minutes. So you've got performance levels which can never be achieved by human beings. So let's come back to the title of our round table. Are we heading to a model collapse? Would that be so bad? If AI continues to be heading towards collapse today, that means that it will save part of humanity. Error is human, which is part of our everyday lives. If AI can make mistakes, well, let's read that as an optimistic message and say that AI has a kind of twinkle of humanity, which is perhaps good for us. And the day when it no longer has that twinkle of humanity, that is the day when we should start to get worried. But at that particular moment in time, we will no longer be worried. We'll no longer be in a position to be worried. So, Christian, perhaps you can talk about AI's role in industry and in your operations and how you look at this potential lack of reliability. So, first of all, I am now going to always write my own emails when I contact my insurance company. Talking about AI, I am not an algorithm expert, far from it. But I do believe, and at Philip Morris, we do believe in AI. I've been working in this company for 20 years, and for 12 years, I've been working on transforming our company. We focus on science, innovation, and I really do note the importance of having clean data. There's not a problem in AI per se. I'm quite optimistic there. I think the problem is in the data itself. Everybody's thinking about big data, but we should be thinking clean data. At Philip Morris, last year, we started to work with AI in all of our different departments, and the biggest success which we noted, yes, there is risk involved, but we are working on those risks. The first thing is to make an assessment of the tools which we're using. The second thing is to do surveillance to make sure that the data we have is clean, squeaky clean. And we have to separate the different tasks, those tasks which come from humans and those which come from AI. And having done that, we've got governance, which is very clear. What can we do? What can't we do? And in governance, it's important always to quote where your data comes from. Is it from AI or not? And we're learning, thanks to this process, the most important thing, as has already been said, that's the human factor. You cannot leave AI unsupervised. For example, AI is a bit like a Ferrari, if you like. You do need someone behind the wheel, a human being behind the wheel. And in the engine, you can't put diesel, you need to put high quality, high octane petrol. Last week, when I was at Vivatech with my team, I saw that AI is connected to robots, it's in defense, it's connected to consumers. AI is surely around us here. It's not only in the net. I think most AI sources are other sources than internet. They're not from internet, the other sources. That's what I wanted to say. Xavier Durand. So there's this risk of a model collapse. Is this a systemic risk? How do you assess this risk of model collapse? I'm going to talk about the company that I am at the head of. It's called Coface. It's a business that is rather sensitive to AI. AI can play a very important role. Just let me give you an example. We've got 750 billion euros of risk from 3 million businesses in different countries. Every day we take 15,000 credit decisions. A certain percentage are taken by machines. 30% are taken by human beings, helped by machines. And so we have one information request every 5 seconds. So it means that we are working with such a huge amount of complex information. You have to read 70 different languages. You have to be able to understand 60 or 70 different types of accounting systems from different parts of the world. And that's where AI is so amazing. I've got a few comments to make, a few observations. Firstly, I would chime in with the fact that the most important thing is data. And for a century now, that's what we've been doing at Coface. We have been making sure that our data is reliable. All countries are different. And in some cases, data is immediately free and reliable. And in the next door neighbor, next door country, it's the opposite. The important thing is to have reliable sources for your data. Sometimes we have to produce our own data because the data doesn't exist in the market or in state systems. And we spend a lot of time and energy. We've got 30 people who do only that. They render data reliable. The second point is that AI is an amazing tool because on the one hand, it enables you to acquire more data. If it's on paper, you haven't got enough laborers to transform that information into a digital format so you can use it, but the machine can do it for you. And then it's a processing capacity which is unrivaled. It's faster, it's more precise, and it takes into account a whole raft of varieties to give you a reliable result. The third point is that AI in itself is not all determining in terms of data. We do use lots of models, and some models can provide very interesting results. And another point is that, in my opinion, you cannot build AI directly into a production process. AI is not a determinist model. If you ask it the same question twice, or if you ask the same question at different times of the day or the week, you'll get two different answers, which is unacceptable when you're talking about balance sheets, which have to be unique.
So we can use AI in order to design machines which will be deterministic and they will process the data. So have mentioned a series of checks. So the collapse of a model, if it occurs for a model, I think that it will not imperil what we've been doing for the past century. Because what is important is to get some verified data based on actual things. We receive 1,000 files about people who haven't paid. These are invoices that are not paid. Of course, there might be false invoices, but we learn all that, and we teach the models to thwart fraud. So I think that regarding our company, this risk is limited, but the potential is huge. So we decided that it is very important. We market the data. We launched an activity based on the sale of data supported by AI. This activity was launched 7 years ago. 1,000 people, 100 million euros in terms of revenues, double-digit growth, and it represents 1/3 of the customers of a group that has been there for 1 century. So we have to be cautious with AI, but it's a revolution. And this will lead to many potential capabilities rather than increased risks. We are at a watershed, a turning point. There are lots of companies, businesses implementing redundancy plans, and they use an alibi. They use AI as a pretext. At the same time, we have other examples. Ford decided to recruit again hundreds of engineers because the operations being entrusted to AI couldn't be performed, as well as with human beings. So if we use AI in the businesses, are we able to recoup our money by using AI? So AI, this is about tools, technologies, but how do we use these tools and instruments? So in a nutshell, so we can use AI for production purposes, to make cost savings, or AI could be used to increase the revenues. We talked about an opportunity to sell data and to create something additional. But what have we seen? In the US, AI adoption is higher. Investments have been high in AI. But we are working on different projects. 75% had to do with cost reduction and 25% to increase revenues. And this year it will be a break-even point, 50-50. So what we read in the media is quite frightening, especially if you consider the different evolutions, developments with the white collars. But there are lots of opportunities that are not yet conspicuous. But it's a balanced approach. It's an industrial revolution. Everybody knows that. And of course, there's a turnover of business activities. And nonetheless, I would like to insist on the fact that AI will destroy red tape, bureaucratic jobs, and nobody can complain about that. Of course, you have some jobs, repetitive manual jobs are being destroyed, and these jobs are of low added value, so it's not high risk. But today there's another risk. We transfer a payroll in Europe to American tokens. I mean, this is the major risk. So we've got a rampant relocation of the value added to another ecosystem. And this is reminiscent of the discussions in Europe, I mean, to locate data, to locate the processes in our regions. At the end of the day, what is important is to make the most of the productivity gains, and we desperately need productivity gains. Another comment regarding the model collapse. I mean, different types of AIs. We started with predictive AI. Then you have AI related to chatbot, ChatGPT, but above all, you have incoming AI technology in the physical world, and the potential is huge. So you have driverless cars. You have driverless cars. I mean, you have a lot of them in the US. So here, driverless cars are being trained on synthetic data. Hence, the test phases, they are quite important for self-driving cars. We have to make sure that there is no problem. The model collapse has to be reliable. So reliability is key, and this is what we need to bear in mind. Xavier Durand, I will hand over to you. La COFAS conducted a survey about the most impacted jobs by AI. So we looked at 920 jobs, and we endeavored to understand the jobs that would be replaced by AI. And we have come up with figures. So for France, it's 16% of these jobs are being made up of tasks that could be accomplished by AI in the future. We didn't look at what AI can create. We are talking about data centers. We are talking about innovation, services that didn't exist in the past, and jobs could be created at COFAS. There are things that we will be able to do today that we couldn't do in the past. When you take 15,000 credit-based decisions, we cannot write down 15,000 chapters about the score, why the score has changed. With AI, you can do that automatically. So it's an added value service that will benefit the final customers, a service that didn't exist in the past. And we hired 50 AI engineers at COFAS, and it's a data laboratory. So these jobs didn't exist. We recruited 1,000 people in the field of data. These jobs were not in existence in the past. But if you look at what has happened over the past 1,000 years, when there's a revolution, you have some jobs that are being destroyed, and then you have jobs that are being recreated. They are different. I don't know what these jobs are. I think that we will invent jobs that didn't exist in the past, especially with coding. In the past, oh, by the way, today we have some people doing manual coding. We have machines that will be able to code, but you need people who will explain to the machine what they have coded and to make sure that the codes are up to the expectations. It's a full revamp of how we work. It doesn't mean fewer jobs, more production with the same means. Thierry Deray, allow me to echo the example that you provided us with. Case law, jurisprudence examples. But when we are faced with those interactions, intimidated by AI, for example, are we efficient when we turn to AI? Especially if we are losing out in terms of authenticity, in terms of clarity, clarity of interactions. I would say both. It's like any human invention. There will be drawbacks and benefits. We human beings will have some work to do to focus on the positive side versus the negative side. When we look at artificial intelligence, if you look at the changes that can be brought by AI to our society, there's a dimension that we need to highlight. First time ever in the history of humankind that a tool created by human beings has targeted intelligence. That's important because so far jobs, professions that were under threat by technological progress were the jobs and professions having to do with execution, with a high manual dimension. A revolt in France and in the UK broke out. So machines in the history encroached upon the work that was entrusted to the workforce. And it was a physical, a manual task. But unlike AI, encroachment is being done on intellectual disciplines. So white collars rather than blue collars, who should be worried about AI? I think that this debate is quite acute in France, more acute than in other countries. I will provide you with an example. Maybe some of you attend dinners in the cities. These are friendly dinners. Have you observed how people are reluctant, how parents are reluctant to confess that the children don't follow the education that will lead them to get a prestigious degree? And most of the time, this is a degree with an intellectual component. When you confess that your child wants to become a painter, it is perceived as something that is painful. That's not the case in Germany or in other countries. This type of notion is less widespread, but there's a high peril for those who follow higher education studies, abstract studies, maths, and for people who learn wood making, painting, there are few risks. One of the technological managers said that jobs being sheltered by AI are plumbers, so they will encourage their children to become plumbers. And this is a change for the world because in the past, how many of us wanted to be a plumber? And how many of us were eager to get our children in manual jobs such as plumbers, but I think that there are some jobs that will be protected by AI. We need to think about those jobs, but it's a cultural matter. So manual work being reserved to human beings, and you have intellectual work being reserved to human beings. And this has to do with the emergence of AI. We need to take that topic without any bias, and I think that we should raise this issue to some French people who want to be presidents, who are candidates. Christian Achille, what do you think of this time horizon? Do you share the diagnosis, or is it a desirable time frame or horizon? I'm talking about Philip Morris. We've just started working with AI. And of course, we are saying that jobs will be curtailed, but we want to equip our colleagues with the tools in order to manage AI. And we need to focus on the most significant tasks for the new recruits. Regarding their profiles, they should be AI-friendly people. But we need to sit on the fence. We've been investing in technology and innovation. What we do with AI, it's an investment. We have time. We will take time to understand, and we'll see how things will develop. But I do agree with you. Radiologists, I don't know if there are some radiologists in the room today, but this is a job that is being done by AI. Data analysis is a matter for AI. So are there radiologists in the room? So nobody has raised his hand, so we don't have a radiologist in the room. That's a concern, and I'm a radiologist because I can get access to ChatGPT. I have access to ChatGPT. So you are also radiologists. Don't worry, you are all radiologists because you are using data and ChatGPT data.
GPT does that much better than we do, but there are many things that ChatGPT does worse than we do, because AI looks like intelligent, right? Looks like it creates texts or code or interprets X-rays faster, cheaper, and better than most humans, but it doesn't understand it. It just looks like it does. That's the real challenge we have ahead. Like, it can tell you that it loves you, and perhaps you're lonely enough to believe it, but it's not true. Fair enough, many humans tell us that they love us, and they don't. So that's not a really new thing for us to handle. The thing is that AI doesn't have a purpose, doesn't have an agenda, doesn't want things. We do. We are the one asking the questions, and AI is very good answering them. But the questions, it's a human thing to ask. And by the way, 10 years ago, radiologues were the jobs that all journalists like myself who were writing about AI used to mention as the ones that was about to disappear. But 10 years afterwards, what has happened is that there are more radiologues than ever because it's cheaper to interpret X-rays, and therefore many more humans are asking for it because AI doesn't break its bones. Humans do. We are the ones needing the X-rays. And about you've mentioned many interesting points, and I've been thinking about what you just said. And it's true that perhaps AI will collapse. I'm pretty sure AI will collapse sooner than humans will collapse. The thing is how we will handle that. But what we are risking of collapsing earlier than AI collapse is human knowledge. University professor told me last week that at university, honestly, they cannot say it publicly, but journalists, we are lucky enough to being told things that very important people cannot tell in public, even prime ministers, especially prime ministers. And this university professor told me that they don't know what's real and what's not anymore in terms of students' knowledge. The system is not ready to evaluate what we know anymore. And that can be like, we can joke about it unless it's the radiolog analyzing the X-ray who has to decide what to do with our bones. I mean, there are many, many jobs that are risking not becoming human anymore, but having humans in charge who don't know what they're doing, because the system for analyzing human knowledge is collapsing too. And that's one of the big challenges we have ahead when we think of what it's collapsing with AI. Another thing that risk of collapsing with AI, a very human thing, is mental health. We're now talking to machines that tell us that we are right, regardless what we tell them, because ChatGPT and other AI systems are ego-boosting machines, because we spend more time on these machines when they tell us that we are right. And AI is not only a technology, it's a business. It's made by humans who want to make money, as your companies do, and that's totally fair. But we have to keep that in mind when we use them, I think, because otherwise we risk mixing their purpose. They don't care about us. They're made by people who want to make money out of them. So be careful also with mental health, which is a very, very, very human thing, because the most stupid person you know is now being told by ChatGPT that he or she is right.
Vous amenez bien la distinction qu'on voit un petit peu depuis le début de la...
So there's a distinction about the public uses of AI and the uses of AI in the corporate world. So as citizens, we have some question marks. So for all the panelists, speakers, do you think that regulation will preserve us from the dangers of artificial intelligence? I know that you are not fond of regulations, but what do you think of that? So it's not a matter of knowing whether I am an adept of regulation. It's very difficult to regulate what you don't produce. Europe doesn't produce its technology, so moreover, you have to consider this theory of games. It's a race for speed, and it's not a theoretical game. So what is happening now? Cybersecurity risks are a reality. Cybersecurity risks have increased quite a lot, significantly. And today, this begs the question for us, practitioners of AI. We need to protect companies against those new risks, and we need to use the best technologies possible. And these technologies won't be driven by the regulators, but by the market needs and requirements. So it's a race. Regulation, in theory, can bring about some positive signs, but if you look at the current situation, that is quite specific. It's not simply a European issue, but it's also an American issue. Have a look at the frontier models for homeland security. It's not a complex form of regulation similar to the European one. It's about interventionism in order to manage the risks. And here, these discussions won't last 12 months or 24 months. So we are at a critical moment, a pivotal moment. Regulation comes in belatedly, and most of the time regulation is poorly designed. So today, if we consider the initial topic, model collapse, I think that the market is well equipped to take up the challenge. Regarding the other topics, we've noticed that GDPR, protecting data, GDPR has slowed down innovation in Europe, especially if you compare what is happening in France and what is happening in other countries. You cannot regulate something that you don't produce. Regarding data and regulation, you have to consider the European situation. I do concur with what you've said, but in Europe, there's a trend towards regulating, but regulating when you don't produce. With GDPR, it doesn't stimulate the development of these companies in Europe and in France. Regulation is being designed for people who are healthy. As far as I'm concerned, I'm quite dubious, skeptical. If we are dealing with people suffering from pathologies, so the screen, the protection of GDPR, will this protection last in terms of citizens' protection? The citizen who is ill, if he knows that when sharing the data for different reasons, for vital reasons, for survival reasons, for happiness, purpose, the citizen will rule out the GDPR regulation. So GDPR regulation was drafted by healthy people who will always be healthy because being healthy is a given. I think that it is totally false, and we disregard the situation of people who are in distress, who are ill. So if you look at this regulation, it is full of optimism. So I think that it is too gullible. Anne Perrault, maybe you can conclude. Thanks a lot. So regarding this discussion, the model collapse, I mean, you don't believe in this model collapse. That's a piece of good news. When you think about the reasons why you don't think about this model, I think that it's due to the fact that we are in the world where there are different types of AIs. There is no such thing as a single AI. The model collapse will be regulated by the market because there's a market and because you have different types of competing AIs, and that's a fundamental dimension, a fundamental element, and I think that regulation should take that into account. When you look at the internet, when it was developed at the start, we said we shouldn't chip in, we shouldn't intervene because the potential for innovation is very high with search engines, with data matching, and that's why Google made a fortune. So GDPR is a limitation, but we shouldn't restrict too much the ability, the capacity for innovation, because people will make the most of it. And the upshot of that is that we've seen the emergence of a dominant stakeholder, a kind of global Western monopoly, i.e. Google, with a few monopolistic operators, Facebook. Then Facebook was gobbled up by others. But when you don't regulate, and we had very good reasons for not limiting innovation, we ended up with a monopoly that destroyed the media model. And I think that this is something that we regret, because the media is on the wane, no revenues, no advertising revenues, fewer readers, and that's an issue, because the proceeds from advertisement are in the pocket of Google. So you have some long-term effects, and we need to think about those. And if you consider regulation when you are interested in the world of the internet and the world of AI, there's a risk to step in too early. When you step too early, you limit innovation. You don't want to limit the ability of Mistral. Of course, we would like to get more companies similar to Mistral. So we have Mistral, and we want to raise the profile of Mistral. And if you intervene too late, AI will be monopolistic. And there are lots of risks associated with AI, and these risks will increase. So the regulators have to take a position on that. Thanks a lot for these concluding words. Thanks a lot for listening.